But when the countdown shows hit, that's when my attention took over. I became a chart. This is the show where I talk about the music and the things around me that influenced my life and how they became part of who I am as a music fan. Welcome to Influencers. I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report, and TKR Video Central. Today I'm going to go a little bit different direction. I've done a lot of good artists in the last few weeks, and this one isn't technically an artist, but it's a very important part of my life, and I'm going to show some stuff which I don't normally do physically on this show. I mean, I have magic box for artists and stuff. If you're a regular viewer of my channel, TKR Video Central, you may notice that I'm kind of obsessed with the charts. Billboard charts in particular, but charts from all over the world. I love watching radio charts. I love doing everything. The Radio Retro Countdown on Sundays is based on radio station playlists from all over the world that I've found online on a variety of different sources. Pulling from that, finding music I've never heard before. That's always a fun thing. I also have recently relaunched the Kirkham Report Power Tracks 50 Countdown. I haven't done my own chart since 2018. I haven't done it seriously since 1993. This time I am. I'm determined to stay the course, and I'm going to fill in all those years between. So what caused my obsession with the charts? To the point where I have almost 2 shelves full of books on the charts from Joel Whitburn's record research, as well as individual radio stations, several other countries, and several books on a particular show. What started that obsession when I was 7 years old was finding a particular show on the radio. Now, I've always been a radio fan. I love radio. But this show was special. It was my show. I got so obsessed with it that I listened to it every week. If we were going to Grandma's house, this show had to come with me, either on my transistor radio or on the car radio, and I got to finish listening to it before I had to interact with anybody except for saying hi and grabbing food or drink or whatever. It was that important to me. And it remained that way for many, many years. I'm talking about the granddaddy of the countdown shows, American Top 40 with Casey Kasem. Later with Shadow Stevens. American Top 40 was my opening to the world of charts. And there wasn't a week that went by that I didn't think about the charts. I'm like, oh, it's going to hit number 1, or oh, it's not going to get that high. And I mean, the thing about radio, and the really cool thing about radio, especially since I started doing the Radio Retro Countdown, which is really an eye-opening experience, is the fact that a lot of songs were hits locally on local radio stations that never really made it all that high on the chart. The top 40 songs, determined by sales and airplay by Billboard magazine since at least 1958, when the Hot 100 was instituted, were the biggest selling songs in America. But there were 60 other positions, plus the bubbling under charts, which ranged anywhere from 10 to 50 at any given time. And there were also 2 other trade magazines at the time, Cashbox and Record World. And several radio tip sheets, including Radio and Records, The Gavin Report, Friday Morning Quarterback, a really fun tip sheet I didn't know about till I found it online called Fred. I don't know why the name came from. In any case, that was determine what radio was playing. And they didn't always mesh. There's songs on some of these charts that I've done on the Radio Retro Countdown that I've never heard of, and that didn't do all that well nationally because I've checked them. I'm like, why didn't I ever hear of this? But they were huge hits in that local market, be it Columbus, Ohio, or Macon, Georgia, or Cheyenne, Wyoming, wherever the chart came from. Canada, some of them come from Canada. That is so fascinating to me. American Top 40 is responsible for me becoming a chart person. In 1978, 45 years ago, a couple weeks ago, I borrowed the Billboard Book of Top 40 Hits from the library. I'd never seen it before. I'd always wanted it, but they finally got a copy in. It was good through, I think, a couple years earlier at that point. And proceeded to make a list of all my number one hits of the 70s. Before that, I'd done a top year-end countdown for 76 and 77, but I didn't do whole charts. Top 10, top 20, top 30 maybe, but I didn't do weekly charts. That started in June of 1978, 45 years ago. And I've kept them up through 1993. I revived them again as part of the discjockey.com years when I was program director there. So I counted those as part of my charts, although they may not be when I get the Missing Years project done, but they'll be pretty similar. And I tried twice to revive it in 2010 and 2018. And 2010 lasted just about a year, and 2018 lasted about 4 months. I still love the charts, and I'm determined to make the new chart work. And I'm determined to use my new chart to spread the songs I love, the songs I'm listening to make people listen and go, hey, that sounds like a cool song. Let me go try it. That's all I'm asking you to do. Eventually, when I start to get the lists online, I'm hoping to have links to YouTube or Spotify or whatever for the songs so you can check them out. But for right now, let's talk about those radio shows. American Top 40 aired in our market wherever I was. It didn't... Oh, well, no, that's not true. When I started listening to American Top 40, it was on WCLT AM in Newark, Ohio, and it ran from 2 to 5 in the afternoon on Saturday. That would maintain throughout the time I lived in Ohio. When I moved to Washington, I was without it for several months because I couldn't pick up the station in Wenatchee that carried it. But when I moved to the coast, KJR came in loud and clear, and they played it Sunday nights from 7 to 11. Or 7 to 10 originally, and then when it expanded to 4 hours, 7 to 11. It was, meant I was in front of the radio, writing down the top 40 songs every week. We moved again to Harrington, and KJRB, their sister's channel, carried it. They carried it Sunday morning from 9 to 1. And then, of course, we moved again back to Ohio, and I found the stations it was on there. Casey Kasem eventually left American Top 40 in 1988, replaced by Shadow Stevens. Shadow does not get the credit he deserves. Shadow did a great job as the host of that show. And I had been a fan of Shadow's from Hollywood Squares, and I was glad to see him doing it, and horror stories about what they did to him and the way he did things when he was hosting in the book American Top 40, The Countdown of the Century by Rob Durkee, which is out of print now. If you haven't read it, find it at your local library. It's a great book. It remained a part of my life, even though by that point I was also listening, or would be listening to, in January of 1989, Casey's Top 40, which was Casey's new show on for Westwood One at the time, I believe. And it would air Sundays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I listened to Casey at 9 in the morning, Shadow at 7 at night, and I was a happy clam. This particular one, I showed it on one of my Robert Z videos. is from October of 1982, and these are hard to come by. They're rather expensive, but usually I try to get them where they have all the notes in it, where it tells you where the commercials are, what the commercials are for, what songs are in each segment, the commercial clocks. This one had a note from Tom Ballantyne, the subscriber director for local commercial availability. That week it aired. These are supposed to be destroyed or returned, and I'd love to have a whole collection of them, but I don't. I don't have it. This is the only one I have on vinyl. I have a few of Shadow's on CD, and I think one of Casey's on CD, but they're in a box I haven't gotten unbunged yet of the CDs. But I did have a few more CDs I'll talk about in a minute. And there were other countdown shows and other radio shows that I liked. Two of the early ones were around in just for a year or two in the 70s. From 1974 to 1976, or from 74 to 76, there was a sister show to American Top 40. It was called Music Scene USA, hosted by Wink Martindale, and KVI Seattle ran it every Sunday afternoon from noon to 3. They counted down the top 30 songs on Billboard's Easy Listening chart, which would later become the Adult Contemporary chart. First place I ever heard Ding A Dong by T-Chen, and knew it was a Eurovision champion. A lot of great stuff on that didn't air on American Top 40 because the songs were of a different nature. Music Scene USA, I checked. It's very hard to come by. I've never come across anybody that has a copy of it. I even talked to Wink Martindale's people on his website, and they said, no, we don't plan to put any of these up. As far as we know, all the shows were destroyed, and we do not have a copy of them. And I'm like, that sucks, because that would be great to listen to. And he was great on that show. He subbed for Casey a couple times. He was great there, too. Another show I listened to, again, that only lasted for 2 years, was the Great American Radio Show. It was a top 30 countdown, or actually I think it was a top 20 countdown, of the top AOR songs in America. Our AOR station, Creme FM in Spokane, didn't carry it. But the radio station in Walla Walla, I've forgotten the call letters again, but I have it in my radiography on my website, which I only found out thanks to the generosity of the show it was companion with, Dr. Demento. They ran it from 5 to 7 or 4 to 6 every Sunday, and then Dr. Demento was on right after it. And I was a huge fan of Dr. Demento also. It was hosted by Mike Harrison, who now owns the Talkers Talk Radio magazine. I'd love to find copies of that, too. I haven't had any luck. I have had luck finding a couple of the other countdown shows that were around for a while. One that's still around, Rick D's Weekly Top 40. This edition from January 30th of 88. And it didn't even come with a box. I don't know whether they didn't get it in a box or whether they just shipped them this way, because it was not exactly your biggest hit in the world. Countdown USA. I'm trying to get an album out here with the notes. Oh, come on. All in nice sleeves. It did come from June of 1988. June 4th and 5th, 1988. At the time, it was hosted by John Leader. It would later be hosted by Dick Clark. Or it was hosted by Dick Clark and later would be hosted by John Leader. This is a John Leader edition. At the time of this one, One More Try by George Michael had been number 1 the previous week, so that dates it pretty well. But again, it comes with notes. It was from IS Inc., and I was unaware of this till I started looking for transcriptions on eBay a few years ago, and I found a whole bunch. John also hosted another show called, I think it was called Hit Music USA. And I do remember Countdown USA being on the radio on one of the stations in Columbus. I forget which one, and that was in the early 90s. I love these kind of shows. They're just fun, and you find out all kinds of cool facts about the acts on that week's show. I have a few CDs also. This one is Dick Clark's National Music Survey. This aired on the Mutual Network at the time. It was, well, actually at this time, this is one of the later ones from the United Stations. It originated on the Mutual Radio Network in late 1978, I think. And there were different versions, and it's come on and off at different times. This particular one, it was geared for radio, and I don't know which chart they used. I believe they used Radio and Records. This one is from 2000. Here's a Countdown America with Dick Clark hosting. This was from 1992. And again, I don't know which chart they used, but I loved it. And this is Top 20 with Lisa Gibbons. Lisa had previously hosted, she had taken over National Music Survey when Dick Clark left that show. And then later on, she did her own soft Top 20. This was for AC stations. And this was from I Knew I Loved You by Savage Garden was number 1. So this would have been 96, 97, somewhere in there. These are just scratching the surface of the countdown shows that I loved. And some of these I never heard till I got the actual transcripts, which is just cool. I love that kind of stuff. Oh, I'm sorry, that was John. This is a different John. John Lander's Hit Music USA, not John Leader. This is a daily show, aired on United Stations in the 1980s and 90s. This one is from 1987, and it was a weekend show. I'm sorry, at the time I thought it was daily. Great, just regular tunes. It was not actually a countdown show. I remember, and there's all the great shows United Stations had. I have a copies of American Music Magazine, which was Rick Dees' show at the time, and a few other things. But I'm always looking for stuff like this because I love them. Radio is not what it used to be. I would love to see some entrepreneur get together with all of these companies that did all of these countdown shows and start a whole freaking channel of nothing but countdown shows on Sirius XM or on YouTube or on Spotify. I don't care. This kind of stuff is always fun for me. It's charts. And I'm a chart fanatic. Notice all the chart facts I list every day on Obscuria. These aren't the only radio things I do, too. I'm a top 40 radio fan. I grew up listening to it. And I like all types of radio. I've talked about my beautiful music obsession last season. I love beautiful music. I used to listen to beautiful music stations when I would sleep or when I was sick. And because it helped soothe me and I enjoyed hearing the music. Top 40 was my staple throughout most of the day, although there have been times I was into AC, hot AC, very awfully light FM, which is extremely light at AC, Sunny 95 in Columbus, Ohio. I liked them all. I love the jocks. The jocks were the best. That's what made these shows what they were. People like Dick Clark, Wink Martindale, Casey Kasem, Shadow Stevens. Even Lisa Gibbons, who I was not a fan of on Entertainment Tonight, is good at this countdown stuff. There was Joe Cipriani, who later did a show, who I loved to death, and who I've phone met when I worked with this jockey. He did some of our voiceovers. I love them all. And I love the local jocks, too. They made it fun. And this kind of show made it fun. One book I'd really like, and I've talked about this, Joel Whitburn, who ran Record Research, passed away last year. His remaining team, which is all of 3 or 4 people, led by his best friend and his daughter, have been striving to finish Joel's work. They finished the Gavin Report book, and they finished the 2nd volume of the new Top Pop Hot 100 book that's going to be updated, because now there's a 1st volume that will never have to be updated. I know I've said this before, But I hope they take advantage of the continuing interest in charts, not just from me, but from other people. And they do. I'd like to see books on the CMJ singles charts, the ones that the adult contemporary college music was playing. Friday Morning Quarterback is another radio tip sheet that has not yet been done. Hits Daily Double has not been done. And this is going to sound crazy, but what I'd really love is a book on the Radio Disney Top 30 Countdown. Radio Disney was the closest thing to true Top 40 radio until its demise in, I think, 2016, that was left on radio airwaves. Top 40 radio nowadays is the same song every 15-20 minutes, or blocks of the same song, or in the morning it's nothing more than a song every 25 minutes in between obnoxious pranks and jokes by the morning zoo crews or whatever. That's not Top 40 radio to me. It never will be. Radio Disney captured it beautifully. Although they had a limited audience, they geared everything for ages 12 through 17, I think it was. And I turned more than one person onto it because we all found we loved it. The style, the jocks, the fun, the kids calling in, the request lines. It was true Top 40 radio. It was a blast. And I'm sorry Disney decided to close it a few years ago. It was really an amazing channel. They evolved over the years, but they never stopped that winning formula. New jocks, new shows, different songs. But they were good. It reminded me of old radio that I used to listen to when I was a kid, like WHDH in WHTH, excuse me, in Newark/Heath, which was a top 40 station, and KJR to some extent in Seattle, and KFI, which I would listen to from Los Angeles at night when I found out I could pick it up in Harrington, Washington. After about 8:30 at night, I could pick it up clear as a bell. Listened every night. Actually won an album and a T-shirt from them one night on a call-in. I loved KSEM from Moses Lake, who were playing stuff that Spokane wasn't touching. Local radio is, for all intents and purposes, dead because it's all owned by corporate entities now. There's very few local radio stations left. There's very few shows like this worth listening to. I don't care how much money you paid me. I won't even take the time to listen to American Top 40 with Ryan Seacrest. I have no interest. I miss the old days. Well, back in my day, radio was fun. Radio was good. And they had great shows to listen to. You know, we did. And it was. And, I mean, I'll give iHeartRadio its due. They have tried to put out stuff of interest to every demographic. There are stations that are geared for the 18 to 34 market. There are stations geared for the 55 and up market. And a few in between. And there's AC, there's pop, there's hot AC. But they don't have that local feel anymore. There's a great station on the Cape, I've forgotten the name of it, which one it is, that plays 70s and 80s oldies. And I mean, they're playing stuff themselves. It's not programmed, they're not a Clear Channel, they're not an iHeart radio station. At least they weren't. And they were playing what they wanted to play. And last time we were down on the Cape, we had the channel on, and I heard songs I hadn't heard on the radio for 40 years. Songs like Hold the Line by Toto, Strange Way by Firefall, stuff from the early 80s, like Kajagoogoo's Too Shy. I haven't heard those on oldie channels forever. Those were great channels. And we just lost a gentleman here in Boston who ran, actually they lost him in Maine, who ran a terrific station here called WJIB, the Memory Station. Completely viewer-supported, listener-supported. And the gentleman that ran it was a one-man operation. He hosted the shows. He decided what programs to play, what kind of commentary to do, what music would run, usually between 1940 and 1978 or so. He was truly amazing. I did a tribute to him on the Kirkham Report a couple of weeks ago, and his presence here in America, in the Boston market, will be missed because WGRB is probably in the process of being sold now. And that's too bad because it's a great station the way it is. Hopefully they'll keep it alive somehow, even if it's just online. Because, I mean, they played Miko's Star Wars and Donna Fargo's The Happiest Girl in the Whole USA and Blue Velvet by Bobby Vinton and stuff by Rosemary Clooney. He was all over the road. And it was fun. It really was. Radio, as it was a big influencer in my life. I talked last year about family and friends and my mom was a radio fan. She listened all the time, and I remember those stations. But when the countdown shows hit, that's when my attention took over. I became a chart aficionado, and I owe it all to this gentleman. Casey Kasem, along with Tom Rounds and Don Bustani, the creators, and WCLT in Newark, Ohio, for making me the chart fanatic that I remain to this day. And one thing I'd like to do with my new chart is to bring some of that radio flavor back. I'm going to try and do that sometime this year. Not sure how yet, or why, or where. But when I do, I'll let you know. You can find out on all my sites and here, everywhere else. But I want people to experience radio the way I remember it, using my chart as the basis. Won't be your typical top 40 radio station, that's for sure. But you'll hear a lot of great music. Personally vouched for by me. And everybody knows I'm right about everything, right? Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding, too. Casey, I miss you. You were one of a kind. You were the greatest. And you were a big influence on me. I always wanted to be a DJ because of you. I had that opportunity and I loved every second of it. I wish I was still doing it. Know that I will do my best to bring that feeling back to other people at some point in time. If you've already subscribed to my channel, thank you. And if you haven't, please do. I always talk about weird subjects like this and other things, and have a whole host of shows on Monday through Sunday, or Tuesday through Monday, or Wednesday through Tuesday. Every day of the week there's something going on. So I hope you'll check it out. Don't forget to share what I post, and please leave a comment. I love talking to you, and I love hearing what you have to say. I try to answer them fairly promptly. I've been trying to do it right away lately. Sometimes I skip it, but I do. I do my best. For influencers, I'm TC Kirkham, TKR Video Central and the Kirkham Report. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your memories of radio are, okay? Ciao, baby.
You